Hey, what's up, guys? Hunter Hayes here. I just hung out for an awesome hang and an awesome chat with everybody here at the Zach Sang Show. I want you to check it out.
Let's do this. Zach Sang Show.
Hello, beautiful human. We
Hello.
are very lucky to have hanging out with us right now. Hunter Hayes! Welcome.
That was a
Thanks.
big round of applause.
That was, I wasn't expecting that, honestly.
Dude,
Thanks, family.
you've had many a round of applauses in your day, and you've been doing this thing. You've been on this journey for quite some time now. I'm not really wanted. Incredible record. To me, brought young country into my life, right next to Taylor Swift,
Super
and
dope.
Teardrops, and
Love.
like really, it changed the way I looked at the genre. Because you were somebody my age, right? What are you, 27?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 26. Somebody my age out there singing country music. I mean, outside of Hannah Montana, which was not really country.
Right.
I hadn't been exposed to that.
Yeah.
Wanted brings it into my vibe, my energy in a big way. And the fact that it was a huge crossover record too. So, but you've been doing this for a long time, man.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to an album that you put out at 6 years old. Freaking, dude.
Why?
Here's the deal. The question is, why not? Because the musicianship that you showcased in that album was it's very clear to me after listening to it, but before I listened to it, I knew that you know 30 freaking instruments. It wasn't until I listened to this album that it all made sense. Because there was a freaking accordion going. There's so many layers to the music you were putting out, and it was all live instruments.
Yeah.
From day one.
Yeah.
So, that being said, how do you start on this journey, and how are you actually introduced to music?
Man, I appreciate you saying all those very kind words. Wasn't expecting that, so I don't really know what to do with it. I don't know. My parents aren't musical. So it's very hard to explain to people, like, my parents know nothing about music. But what a blessing, because, like, I didn't have stage parents. I had a dad that, like, managed me, but only because he was afraid of managers.
Because of everything else.
Yeah. And so I had this guardian. And I think, honestly, I still, like, when I'm building my team, like, I refer to people as family members. Like, I need a parent. I need a sibling. Like, I know that that's really good for me. I'm an only child, so I really don't know what it's like to have a sibling. But I was just around a lot of music, I think. My dad loved listening to music. He loved studying music. That's where I get my, like, study obsession from. When I fall in love with an album, I'll listen to the same music for 60 days in a row, nonstop. And I get that from him.
What are you listening for? Like, and where does it start?
Great
Like,
question.
from your first listen, do you enjoy it like a fan, or?
Yeah, 100%. Well, I will say I enjoy it like a fan right up until the point where I have to start. I love enjoying it as a fan and then deconstructing what I love about it. And not trying to emulate that, like not like going to the studio and saying, like, I want something that sounds like 21 Pilots. Going, no, here's what I like about it. I love the stereo spread on this sound. I love that this was an anchor. I love that this is a riff and not just like an accident. And I love that, like, they chose to make this section. You know, I love the study of it. I'm upset, as you can tell. I just raised my voice, getting excited about it. So that, you know, I don't know how like this love at first sight with music thing started, but it was that. Like, when I was 2 years old, my grandmother. This is what I've heard my entire life, so I'm just going to recite what I've heard my parents tell as my story.
Pass it on.
My grandmother gave me a toy accordion when I was 2 years old, and I did not put it down. And then it was a drum set for my 5th Christmas, and then it was a guitar for my 6th birthday, and it just kind of started becoming like, that's all I did.
So that's why you're obsessed with accordions.
Maybe.
You have 30 of them?
I had, so my dad was the toy accordion. My dad ended up buying, I think, up to like 20 to fix the one that I wouldn't let go of.
Really?
Because he knew he had to get spare parts from something. So we just kept buying toy accordions, and they're all still hanging out in like a shed in my backyard in the town where I grew up.
Can you play the accordion?
I used to feel really comfortable on the instrument. I haven't touched it in 10 years.
Why isn't it cool anymore? What do we need to do to bring the accordion back?
So
dude?
I don't know that it was. I don't know that it was ever not cool. I think I had a love-hate relationship just because it was. You know, I grew up playing Cajun music,
Because you grew up in Louisiana.
which is someone else's music, And I started writing my own music when I was like 15, 16. And I started playing more of that. And every time I'd write, I'd play guitar. So at the shows, I was doing like half Cajun music, half like this country blues thing that nobody really understood. And I remember there was one show that I got heckled at and like yelled at by multiple drunk people. And I was just kind of like hands in the air, like, that's it. I'm never touching an accordion again. And that was the only way that I could like, I knew that was the only way that I could jump into writing and being an artist, was to just let that go for a little while. So for a minute, it was just kind of like, there's not enough therapy to get me to play that accordion again.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
So does that heckling moment drive you to write your own records, or did you always know you wanted to do it?
I honestly just wanted to do it. And I'm like, I never had a problem. Like, I played 4-hour cover gigs. Like, I never had a problem doing that. I just love making music. But I think at the end of the day, I knew that there was a reason that I was drawn to writing, and I would be lying to myself if I said it didn't matter. You know, writing matters to me for some reason, and I feel like it's part of my purpose. And so I think I just had to really commit to it, and you know, keep the blinders on.
Do you teach yourself how to play the instruments that you kept getting for Christmas growing up?
I wouldn't say teach myself, because when somebody says like you can play 30 instruments, I can't play 30 instruments. I've made noise on 30 something instruments, and now in digital age, like, I can suck at something as much as it takes for me to get an album made. Yeah. And then once the album's made, nobody cares. So, you know, like all that stuff, it was just like, yeah, I'd learn a little bit of this, a little bit of that, just enough so I could make noise with it, you know?
So what's your biggest strength? Is it writing? Is it playing guitar? Is it your vocals?
That's a great question. I feel like I don't know about strength. I feel like that would have to come from somebody else's perspective. I know that passions for me are writing. I live to write. I write more often than I ever have, because I've started allowing myself to write in fragments versus like, oh, you have to sit down at 11 o'clock with a co-writer and finish a song by 3, because that's how it was for me for a while.
Got it. So you're like, as you live, you write, because
now, yes,
you're less. I don't want to say like you care less about the margins of the actual business. You care more about the product, right? Because if you set up a session with somebody, money goes into that. You need to come out of that with a song,
right?
Most of the time.
Yeah, I try to surround myself with people who think the same way, which is not necessarily that we don't care at all about the margins, whatever. But my greatest achievements have come from not thinking of those things and starting from nothing. And so I think, in every creative aspect of my life, there has to be nothing to lose. Like, I love working at home because no one has to approve a budget. No one has to know when I'm working. No one has to know what I'm working on. I can fail miserably and no one knows. Or if it's awesome, I can send it to somebody and say, I really believe in this. But yeah, I'd have to say between writing and performing live, there's something about performing live that's just in my blood. And it's funny because I have a lot of insecurities when I walk on stage, like a ton of insecurities about my voice, about the way I look, about the way I move, and all these things, and about the way I play. I'm full of nervous energy, but for some reason, that is the one place where I feel like I am supposed to be.
What? How do you know? How do you? Is it because you've been on the stage in some shape or form for so long?
Yeah.
Like, is there a part of you that's like feels like you belong here because you've just always been there and you feel like you crave it? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Well, I think there's definitely. I mean, there's just a lot missing when I'm not on the road, you know. And if I'm playing to 2 people or I'm playing to 20,000, it's the same thing.
But that's how you know, right?
It's just special. Yeah.
Like, to go back to a bar where people heckled you, as long as you're performing, because that's what it takes to fulfill that desire.
Yeah. I mean, I'll definitely gladly pack up an acoustic and a Mini Cooper and keep playing music if that's what it means to keep playing music. Like, that's part of it.
Okay. Wanted. Would you consider that one of your greatest accomplishments?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's a huge record.
It's a very successful. It worked.
Yeah.
it worked for sure.
Massive.
Yeah, I would. I think I would. Yeah.
I mean, how does that change the way you approach a record, or does your creative process not change?
Well, I've just in the last couple of years started really telling the truth behind the song, because when I wrote the song, it was purely a letter to this girl that I was in the friend zone with. And the intention was to play it for her on the way to our coffee dates, because that's what you do when you're 17, and have her get the picture, because I couldn't figure out how to say it. And And I remember like writing it in like an hour and 30 minutes with Troy. Like we slammed through it, which is, those are the songs that are kind of meant to be.
Yeah.
And I remember playing it for her. I did a really quick demo, piano vocal, and didn't work. And then management heard it, and they were like, "Oh my God, you have to play this for the label tomorrow." And I did, and they were like, "That's the big single, that's the one." And this is like a year in advance of actually going in and recording the album. So at this point, I'm just hearing all these things. Like, I don't know what any of this means. I don't know how to weigh any of this, but if you're excited about it, I'm excited about it. I thought it was too mushy to put on the record. I was dead wrong, and that's okay. But what it taught me was that, again, going back to your kind of forgetting about the world around you and all the sort of conditionals, I made something that worked and connected with people when I was just writing a letter and just pouring out everything and saying what I thought was too much.
But when it's too much, usually it's the right amount for the public.
I'm learning that my definition of too much only means that I've actually let somebody into something I was not going to let them in on.
Hey, beautiful human, real quick. Everybody knows about the risks of driving drunk. You could get in a crash. People could get hurt or killed. But let's take a moment to look at some surprising statistics. Almost 29 people in the United States die every day in an alcohol-impaired vehicle crash. That's one person every 50 minutes. Even though drunk driving fatalities have fallen by a third in the last 3 decades, drunk driving crashes still claim more than 10,000 lives each and every year. Many people also are unaware that driving while high can be just as dangerous. In 2015, 42% of drivers killed in crashes tested positive for drugs. It's not so harmless after all, is it? Come on, get this. From 2007 to 2015, marijuana use among drivers killed in crashes doubled. The truth is, driving while high is deadly, so please stop kidding yourself. If you are impaired from alcohol or drugs, do not get behind the wheel of a vehicle. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Drive sober, or get pulled over. Because there's still, are you alluding to the fact that there's a deeper meaning to wanted? Right? To the fact that, like, as long as you still know the meaning behind a record,
Yeah.
and nobody else knows.
No, I would much prefer everybody else to know. I think I was just afraid to talk about like the details of it at that time because I was like still friends with this girl and it was a little awkward and a little weird.
Does she know now?
But oh yeah, she knows now. Yeah, yeah. And we
probably
dated for
one
a
of-
second. It just totally was not meant to be.
Well, that's probably one of the greatest honors of her life.
I don't
Come
know
on.
about that. I don't know if that's the case.
Somebody wrote a song this big about me, I'd be telling everybody. It'd actually be the song on my dating profile. It'd be on my playlist.
That's amazing.
I think it's pretty cool.
Well, appreciate that, man.
Maybe I'm crazy. But, I mean, does it change the way you view a record? And is there pressure put on you again to have another one? Because
I think that
it was big.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it has the power to if you give it the power to, and I have and I haven't. I've gone through segments where I did. I've gone through segments where I didn't. And I think that's the biggest thing is realizing that all of these things, all of these like compare, because that's honestly all that ends up happening is the only time you really shortchange yourself is when you compare something you did yesterday to what you're doing today, And I think that's something that the business doesn't understand because in the business's eyes, they have to compare it.
Yeah.
They have to make enough, as much money today as they did yesterday. Whereas for me, it's like I have to make honest art. So it's in my best interest that it doesn't sound like it did yesterday. And it's in my fans' best interest that I'm not making the same music I did yesterday. So it's hard to be reminded of that. But I think that honestly comes down to surrounding yourself with people who feel that way, who work that way, and who are willing to remind you of that and champion you when you're just trying new stuff.
You're right. And come on, the country community is a very loving community. They're a great, loyal fan base of human beings.
Yeah.
Who really, once they take you in, they take you in.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not 100% in there, but I watch.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're 100% right. And that's what I felt growing up, and I've 100% experienced. I mean, I've got this tattoo. I haven't even explained what the tattoo. I mean, I've to some extent explained what the tattoo is. It has to do with the upcoming project, and fans are already getting the same tattoo, and they're spreading the love for the new project. And I haven't even announced the album title, but they've got my back, and they always have. Like, that feeds into the creative process too. It's like I know that I can keep being me because they're going to be there.
So the tattoo on your arm,
Yeah.
that is, I feel like I saw it on a piece of cover art when we were looking at your website.
The paper airplane, isn't it?
It's paper airplane. Yeah. Yes, it's shown up in a couple places in the last couple days. But it's representative of this project for me. This project is about like weightlessness and just like putting everything on paper and just, paper airplaning it into the sky and trusting that it'll land where it needs to, and the person who needs to find it will find it.
So are the last two records that you've put out, one in February, one in June, Heartbreak and Everybody's Got Somebody's on my list because I like Jason Mraz, and that song is like my life's work. Also, like One Good Reason, Heartbreak. Are those two records from the upcoming album?
Yes. They're on One Good Reason, Heartbreak, One Shot, and Dear God are part of the new project.
Cool.
Dear God's a very honest one, isn't it? What were you going through when you wrote that?
Honestly, still going through it. I feel like it's just that was the first time that I think I let everybody into some serious like insecurities. I was writing with Andy Grammer. We did his podcast.
Oh, he's great.
He came to the house. At the time I had a basement. I had a studio in the basement. That's pretty much where I did the whole project. But he came to the house. I set up 2 mics. We did his podcast
In Louisiana? Sorry.
in Nashville. I've been in Nashville for like 11 years now. So that's kind of like new home, if you will, home away from home.
But yet your accordions are still in Louisiana.
Yes.
So far away. Keep going.
But Andy came over and we did his podcast, and his podcast is called The Good Parts, and it's the same, like I think it's 9 questions for everybody. And it's stuff like, where do we go when we die? It talks about your faith, talks about beliefs, it talks about all those things, insecurities and stuff. And so this whole conversation, these 45 minutes of us on his podcast, we're totally just diving right into a song title that I had that I wanted to write with him called Dear God. And so we just started kind of messing around with it, and he just started, pacing the room, singing parts of the chorus, and I was just catching the parts that he was singing that I loved, and he finished with Dear God, are you sure that you don't mess up? And it was such a thing to wrap my head around, because it was like everything in my brain was like, well, you can't say that, but everything in my heart was like, I'm not the only one who feels like that happens, and it's not that I actually doubt it, I just need to be reminded, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so we just kind of dove in and went for it, and I didn't think that I would be allowed to put it out. Another one of those songs, and I was dead wrong. The label, like, really connected. When I say the label, like, there's certain people that I work closely with, like a small handful of people that I trust with my music before it's out. And we sat, we talked, we shared it. They shared it a ton. And they just really, really believed in the message. And I loved it, because it's kind of, that and other songs have set the bar for transparency for this project for me.
Were you questioning God's plan for you, or what exactly were you questioning?
No, I wasn't honest. I think, where do I start? I was more questioning my own design, and saying like, and not necessarily like, I'm trying not to wash over it, but essentially just like, what am I missing? Because I'm missing a lot of things in my life, close relationships, certain things, certain holes just haven't been filled. What am I missing? Is it me? Or is it just time? Is it just, this is part of a bigger plan and things like that? And those insecurities, like so many of those things I've had to deal with, where the thing that I love to do puts me on stage, and every time I go on stage, I'm not like as confident as I wish I was. And I feel like I'll get there, but this was just kind of handling all of those things, and just kind of like my biggest goal was for it to be a prayer, and for the prayer to be a total mess, like not the most predictable, like properly worded prayer, but an honest prayer of like, yo, I'm a mess, talk to me, help me out with this. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Do you get answers to the questions you have by the time the song's finished?
Meaning,
I mean, you go in with questions, writing
Right.
it. Do you realize something through the process that you didn't know before?
that's a great question. I think I'm still realizing things through the process of singing it live. of talking to fans about it. My conversations with fans about that topic have gotten super deep, and I'm learning a lot in that alone. Like I feel like it wasn't necessarily written as like a call to like friends in the world, but I feel like it's kind of done that accidentally. It's brought me closer to people. I've heard things that I really needed to hear and didn't know I needed to hear. And again, that was not the intention for the song by the slightest. It was just meant to be honest and say, yo, if we're being real, I'm also a mess. Like, yes, I get on stage, I act professional when I have to, I act like an adult when I have to, but let's be honest, I'm a wreck. You know what I mean? Some days I'm just a mess. Yeah.
But it's that honesty that people we want, right? Like you want to know that, I don't know, there's other people like you.
Yeah.
You're never alone.
Yeah.
And I think those are the stories that could really be told in country music because of the clarity, like nothing is crazily produced. Everything is, I don't know, you really feel it, It's a little bit more raw.
Yeah.
Heartbreak. One of the things I noticed was like the phrasing on this record, different than the other ones before. Like you're writing, it's really unique. Awkward, but the ice is breaking. I've been in some relationships, but I've remained an optimist. Like the phrasing on that is cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, like not traditional country. How does that song start?
It started, I think it started as a title in my phone. I think I was kind of sensing some weirdness in a relationship. I mean, this probably was 2.5 years ago, and I just was like, okay, well, I have to look at the bright side somehow. That's always kind of my like marching orders to start with. Like, and then you fast forward to the end of that relationship and me taking this trip by myself. I went to Hawaii because I've always wanted to go and like spend time there, and I never got to.
So you go alone?
I went alone.
Oh, what is that like?
It was weird and awesome. Incredibly lonely and incredibly educational. But my first day, I had this. It was picture perfect because it was like, dude, it was like the weather was perfect. I went into town to grab a cup of coffee. Nothing was open, but I walked by this dope guitar shop, and I was like, I gotta go in there. And then I saw some crazy happening on the street ahead of me, and I turned around and was like, I'm gonna go check that guitar shop out. And so I went in the guitar shop. I met the owner. I bought a guitar, my first ever classical guitar.
Cool.
It was beautiful, and I ended up just drive. I always just like drive on vacation, just because I love finding new things and discovering new things, and I like not planning my trips. And so I just ended up at this area where there was nobody. It was on the edge of the ocean, like volcanic rock, so it's like this picturesque Hawaiian scene. And I was just like, I'm just gonna be the most predictable like Instagram person and just like sit by the edge of the ocean with my notebook and my guitar and write a song. And so I sat there and I started just journaling because I knew I wasn't gonna like, because again, you got to remember at this point my mindset is still like, oh well, you're supposed to start and finish a song all at once. So I'm trying to like undo that bad habit. So I just sat down with my notebook and I started just jotting a bunch of stuff down. I had a bunch of titles and stuff I wanted to try. And one of the things that took up 2 pages was this letter to my future better half. Because I was like, I really want to I'm looking forward to meeting this mystery person, whoever she is. And I don't know anything, like, I don't know, like, I don't know. I didn't know what to say or how to say it or what I was even saying. I just babbled. And I when I got home, I had a bunch of co-writes scheduled, and one was with Gordy Sampson, who I've written a ton with and love and am a huge fan of. And Toggs and Simon is the first time I'd ever written with them. But I walked in, Gordy had this acoustic riff, and I loved it because it's a Gordy Sampson acoustic riff. And it's, I mean, literally for me, it's like having one of my favorite artists featured on my album. But walked in, he had the riff. I kind of like carefully stepped into the room with the idea like, hey, I've got this weird thing. It's soup or whatever. But I feel like this album needs to be celebratory because it is. It's moving on. It's shedding weight. And there's not a love song, but I want to write a love song to no one, right? This stranger. And so we started this like... Yeah, we started this concept of, okay, we started with the second verse, and then we wrote the first verse just to laugh at and make fun at the dating process because it's like Groundhog's Day.
I want to be that deep. I want to have the power to sit down and write a letter to my better half, my future partner.
Yeah.
That's like really...
There's a lot to cover though, and I don't know how to cover it, to be honest with you.
I mean, you did a decent job, and the fact that you even attempted. Respect.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Seriously.
Cheers.
It's a lot to unpack. How are you feeling?
One good reason. That's the current single.
That's the latest song out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
For real.
Thank you.
So what's that song? I honestly was reading the lyrics and I was like, and listening to the song, I'm like, I can't figure out if you like the girl you're talking to, if you don't like the girl you're talking to, if you're looking for a reason like that you want to be there, you don't want to be there.
Well, I think that's the point. I think.
Oh, perfect. Then you nailed it.
I think I really do. I think that's kind of what I loved about the song was that it didn't answer it, because I think there are some times where we separate from somebody and we go through that was that stage of like I'm in a really awkward place where I don't know where to go next, and I'm not sure that I should have left. I can't remember why I left. I know that I left for a reason, but at the present moment, that's nowhere to be found, right? And so it's that kind of like crossroads, like standing in the middle, spinning around in circles moment of like, did I mess up? Am I supposed to move on? And it's also just about missing somebody. And I think it's okay. I'm like I told you, like I'm always like the optimist. What's next? But I think that was my moment of, man, I just got to live in this for a second, and it's not that easy to move on sometimes,
So, does this whole process start before your trip to Hawaii or with your trip to Hawaii?
It started right before. This is the first record that I've ever... Because like for 3 or 4 years, I wrote a lot of stuff, and I'm proud of a lot of stuff that I wrote. But even with that, I think it was kind of just like, it was all over the place. Because I was trying to please a lot of different sort of filters, and I kind of just like threw my hands in the air at the beginning of 2018 and felt like, if I don't start over now from scratch and just pretend that I don't have anything anymore, no music that I've written so far, if I just erase everything in my head, maybe that's the right place to start. And so I did, and I named the project. I picked what I wanted for the cover art, and I knew what I wanted the theme to be. I wrote the title track first, so that I could bring it into all of my other writers and say, okay, here is the album. This is what it's going to feel like. This is what it's going to look like.
You set the tone.
Yeah, kind of. And I wasn't sure whether that was going to like bury me into a corner or like send me shooting towards my dream, right? And it worked because I wrote this whole project, and I remember like sitting down with my A&R guy, Rohan, and I was like, okay, look, I'm not like just tossing you an album and saying take it or leave it, because I don't work like that. But take a listen to these 12 songs and tell me if I'm crazy, And then like a week later, we were out with, the rest of the label team, and I was playing them the sort of like rough sketch of the album and what it was going to feel like. So for me, it was a huge accomplishment. And I remember at the end of 2018, I wrote a song that I walked in and I said, I don't have a song that ends the album yet, and I need to do that. And I've never done that before either. And we sat there and we wrote like this sort of like retrospective, this is what I've learned thus far. And I remember closing the car door after leaving that session and just going, all right, the album's done.
So, how long have you been sitting on this album?
Not too long. Because like to me, there's like 3 stages. There's like the song, there's like the demo, which is kind of like a 2D, like a floor plan or like blueprint. And then there's the actual album, which is like the 3D mock-up, where you can actually walk through it and see it and feel it. And so it's gone through those stages. So like 2018 was kind of my chance to write it and demo it. And then like this year's been just me kind of like finishing. And I didn't want to, as much as I love the idea of like disappearing somewhere and like recording an album, it's very easy to get stale when you do that. And a lot of things get jumbled together and a lot of things start to sound the same. So we worked on it kind of one song at a time and just kind of not at our leisure, but in the safe house. I called my home studio the safe house with the sort of safe house mentality.
Which is, when it's right, and you shouldn't rush anything.
Yeah, totally. We finished songs and completely redid them.
Do you feel scared? Do you feel free when you have the power to kind of dictate what your music is going to sound like, look like, feel like, all of it?
I feel incredibly free. Incredibly free. Yeah, there's some scary moments, but I think that's when you have to trust the people. I mean, that honestly, the only scary part is kind of trusting that it will find all the homes that you want it to find. You know what I mean? And find the people that you want it to find. But I think that's when for me, I have to come to my team and just make it clear, like, hey, I want to make sure you understand like where my heart is, where this project is, and how can I serve you, and how can I make this work.
It's cool. I mean, would you say you work towards this, or like? I mean, it's obviously deserved not having somebody like breathing down your like, because Wanted, right? Was that creative dictated by you, or was that was that all dictated by other people?
No, I don't think there was ever a moment where anything was like heavily dictated by anybody else. There was a lot of voting processes just because I was learning a lot, and I wanted to have a team that was able to tell me like, yeah, we know you love this song, but it sucks. You know, of course, thank God they never said it that way, but it was a lot of kind of it was a lot of just kind of like, oh yeah, you think that'll work? Yeah, sure, let's do that. You know, and slightly less of like a narrative driving the music, and a little bit more of, I'm going to capture a lot of feelings. I'm going to give you a lot of things about me, and they were all completely honest. But you know, starting with the actual story and the narrative, and knowing that that's how I'm going to connect with people at the end of the day.
I understand that. You're telling a story that's the size of an album as opposed to just one-offs, right?
Right.
It's a beautiful art form.
Well, this upcoming album, is it like your first in 4 years? Is it been that long?
4 or 5, yeah.
Why such a long break between it? Because there was a while back in like 2014, 15 where you heard about Hunter Hayes all the time.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of, where'd you go?
Wouldn't call it a break.
Okay.
But I was trying to figure it all out. I was trying to write. I was like, I had a lot of voices. There was a lot of things. And there's this tendency too, and I think it just took me a while to figure out what I needed to say and what I was meant to say, you know. Not just like what I want to say. I hear a lot of people like, well, what do you want for your... It's like, well, I don't operate based on want. I operate based on like what's meant to happen, what's purposeful, what means something. And I think for a while I was just kind of like, I was going through stuff and living things that I wasn't writing about because I didn't think I was allowed to. And I didn't think anybody cared. Mm-hmm. Quite honestly, at the end of the day, I was just convinced that no one would care. I would write these weird concepts like Dear God or something like that, and it would just fall flat.
But even though Wanted was based off a letter you wrote to somebody, like super, super personal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not enough proof that like your deepest, most personal stuff is kind of the right direction?
You would think it would be, right? I mean, but I think, I don't know. I guess I just wasn't hearing that at the time, which is funny.
Who tells you? How do you realize?
I think part of it was I mean, there's no question that part of it was me. Yes, I think I went through all these great depths. Like I rented this studio. Like at first I was living in a condo, so I rented this studio downtown, and I would drive to it every day, and I'd leave at 2:00 in the morning, and you know it was mine for like a year and a half. And for me, that was removing, you know, any conversations about like budgets or song approvals or I could just bring in whoever I wanted to work with and try things, and I removed every single filter but my own. And I think I had to remove my own filter and be okay with that and kind of come to terms with that.
I get that reserved feeling because kind of living this famous life, and you're famous for a while. Rumor has it Robert Duvall gave you your first freaking guitar. I don't even know if that's true or not, but the fact that it's on the internet.
True, yeah.
That's crazy.
It's nuts.
You were invited to perform at the White House. You've been famous for a long time. So, like, through that, like, you kind of build, like, a distance or, like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you're a little bit more removed. And I feel like the more famous you get, the harder that could be sometimes.
Yeah.
And you got really, really famous even before that, like right in the middle. Like Wanted was probably wild.
Yeah.
Still today. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's hard to. I don't know the point I'm trying to make, but the point I'm trying to make.
I'm tracking with you. I'm with you.
No, the point I'm trying to make is like being famous is not as easy as it looks, and just because everybody else likes you doesn't mean that like necessarily you got everything worked out inside,
right? Or
you feel comfortable enough to share.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like you feel like, because you never know.
Yeah.
It's just a different approach to pretty much everything, except for like bodily functions. That's the one thing we share. And a few other things, marriages and breakups.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm crazy.
No, I mean, I think, what I was connecting with was definitely, I think, the realization that as you live life, I think, for instance, when the debut record came out, I was kind of one person, right? But as we all do from 18 to 23 years old, a lot of things change and you learn a lot about yourself. And I think part of it, I can't tell you what percentage was kind of putting off, number one, dealing with it personally, number two, writing about it, and number three, being okay with sharing it.
Yeah, but also you were working too at the same time that you had all this personal stuff that had to go on.
Right.
It's kind of like you tucked it away.
Totally.
I personally can speak from experience in that.
Yeah.
You tuck it away,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't go away. It eventually peaks its head up,
Yeah.
and you have all the that you got to unpack.
Yeah.
But it's like years of it,
Yeah.
like teenage years of it.
Yeah, it can certainly build up. But the good news is, as a creator, that there's a way to take my experiences and give them purpose. All the stuff that I've been through, and like finally there's a reason for it now that there's a song that somebody's going to reference and hopefully will be their soundtrack as they step through the same chapter. I'm not the only one. Like, even though, I don't even, like, I have a weird relationship with the whole famous word because I don't believe that I think my music was. And I had the privilege of having music that was everywhere, but I didn't ever feel like I was like heavily screwed. I did for a minute, but I just made it up in my head, honestly. But I had the privilege of having incredible fans who like cared about me as a human, and I felt that. And I'm now going down two different roads in my head, but essentially, completely lost my train of thought. Screw it.
No, your relationship with the word famous is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because some people can either embrace it or like, I get what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Like you remove yourself from it.
Yeah, so I think, now I feel like there's a perfectly logical reason for me to go through it. It's like going through anything in life. I guess what I was trying to say was I'm not the only one. Like, even though I have eyes on me, doesn't mean that anything I'm going through is exclusive. And there's none of this, BS of like, you don't understand. It's all human shit.
Yeah.
And so if you put it in a song, if you try to just work through it and talk to the world about it, then chances are there's a lot of other people feeling something very similar.
Louder. Yeah.
You were talking about those insecurities on stage, and you've been touring for a long time. How do you handle it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I don't know. I've gone through different stages. Like I at first it was just like 5 Hour Energy and Red Bull, and like you just jump over it. And then it was like Scotch, and you kind of like succumb to it. And then it was, that's not working. And it's just been stages of like, what's going to help me feel like me on stage. And I'm still honestly just finding that every show's different.
Are you feeling more confident the older you get? Is it an age thing?
I will say, no. Yes, kind of. Yes and no. I think the thing that's honestly given me the most confidence are the shows. Like we did our first like headline tour again, this spring.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the first time that I really felt like me again. Because I was playing new music that wasn't released to fans that had already heard it. They find it on YouTube, they know the words. So I felt like I was accepted for me, and I didn't have to like play a bunch of hits for people to be like, okay, now I'm listening. Not that that's the case, but in your head, sometimes you make that up. So I think kind of just moving into this new music, I think the more of this new album I put out, the more comfortable I feel on stage. Because now I'm just like, okay, you get me. Like, you see what's going on. There's no secrets anymore.
Yeah, it's 100% you.
Yeah.
When will the full album be out?
Can't say yet.
Next record?
There's some rumors going around, and it's complicated. If it was a Facebook relationship status, it would be complicated.
Whoa. What makes it complicated?
I have crazy ideas, and this album really means a lot to me. So I don't want to just like go the conventional route with it. And I beg of you to stay tuned, because there may be something really exciting.
What like? I'm anxious now. Like, what are we talking? Are you
Good.
gonna skydive?
That's where I want you to be. I want you to be in that like what's happening stage. I'm kidding.
Are you gonna ride a scooter through a flaming ring of fire?
I don't have insurance for that. Yeah, no, but I am really excited about this project, and to get to tell the fans what we're doing about it. I just can't say it yet.
I love the paper airplane.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Are you growing the hair back?
Accidentally. It just grows back so fast. I had shaved my head just
Why?
like clean slate.
Feel like a
I
new
just felt like it
person.
was a nice change,
Yeah.
but it just grows back so fast. I was like, I think we were just on the road for like 3 weeks, and I never got a chance to get a cut. That's basically where I'm at right now. I just haven't had a chance to get a cut yet.
Do you want to shave it again?
I don't know. I go back and forth because there's some pictures I see of me, and I'm like, dear heavens. And there's some pictures that I'm like, okay, I look a little bit. I feel confident. I tell you what hurt was. It's funny how people. This is the first time I've ever experienced this, by the way, where people are just like so happy to tell you how they feel about your appearance as a human.
Welcome.
I've never experienced it to that level because I don't like. Sometimes I read comments, but I'm very cautious on that. Like with social media, like there's some things I feel comfortable going in and reading the comments about. Then there's some posts that I'm just like, nope, I'm not touching that. I'm not looking at the response. I spoke my truth, and that's how it's going to be. But there was this one sweet, sweet lady, and I know she's going to see this and hear this, and I love her to pieces. She's been a huge supporter. I've never heard anything negative come out of this sweet, sweet person's soul. And like, I guess it was about 2-3 weeks ago, as my hair was starting to grow out, and she was like, "Oh, thank God you're growing your hair out again. Don't ever shave your head again."
Let her decide. She deserves that power.
I thought, all right, so this is what it's like. But I had so many people like, "Oh my God, why did you shave your head?" And I was like, "Oh, because I'm happy with it." So
I mean, hey, it had to happen for life and growth.
It had to happen. Yeah,
I would do it, but I know I would scare people.
you should do it.
Oh, I'm already scared.
You should do it right now. I'll go get a razor. We'll just make it a thing.
Oh my God, I'd cry. We'd be all hanging out in a puddle of my tears. What are you thinking?
Well, the only other question I had is, how do you feel about this new like country hip hop thing that's going on with like Old Town Road and was it Blanco Brown?
Blanco Brown.
Do you know that one?
I'm not familiar with everything. I'll say this though, country's always when I grew up, like that's what I loved about country was, yes, it had like a central sound, but it was also all over the map. Like I grew up in Rascal Flatts, like the 3 albums that made the biggest impact on me in 1 year were Rascal Flatts. They all came out at the same time. Rascal Flatts, Keith Urban, and Brad Paisley. Brad Paisley was like everything you've heard about country from the outside looking in. Keith Urban was like every rock and roll, lover's dream when it comes to country because he combined those two things, but it was so natural and it was not forced. He grew up around a lot of that music, but he brought it into what he did, and it was authentic. Same can be said for Rascal Flatts. Like, you had these incredible soaring vocals. You had the 3-part harmonies, which sort of felt like a bluegrass band. Yeah. They had bluegrass instrumentation, but they could just as easily sing a pop song in a heartbeat. So you had that influence coming into what they did very naturally. So I feel like that's always been the shape of country. It's always been a big place. It's a big table, big house, like whatever you want to call it or compare it to. Like there's always been room for everybody to bring in what they love and tell their honest, true story, And it's not as song based or as album or tour based. It's artist based, and that's I think the biggest differentiating thing for me is that what I've always loved about country is that when you find something in country that you like, it's typically that you're finding an artist. You don't just find a song and save it and like, oh, well, I don't know about the next one. Like and it goes back to the loyalty thing. Like when we find people that we connect with the person, and therefore everything that they do, as long as it's authentic and genuine, you stay connected to.
But is that a defining factor of what makes a country record or not? Because Old Town Road gets thrown off the chart, but I can make the argument that his entire album is definitely not country whatsoever.
Right.
You know what I mean? The only thing close to country was Old Town Road.
Right.
And that's where it stopped.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, that's one of those opinion things where like everybody has a different definition of what fits and what doesn't. And it literally just depends on what you listen to and what you love and what you like. You know what I mean?
There is a beautiful camaraderie that I've heard about in country that I've never heard about in any other genre of music. Like the practice of if somebody has a #1 record for like a week or two, they'll call a program director and say, "Don't play my record," so somebody else could have it instead.
I'm almost 100% confident that no one's ever called and said, "Don't play my record."
Or
however,
play it less or play the other guy more. That happens.
There is kind of this like respect for like if we know if you know that somebody's going for #1, chances are they've been on the chart for like 52 freaking weeks. So if they want it, let them have it. Like let them enjoy it. Yeah.
I don't know. It's nice.
Yeah. It is. I mean, there is a sense of, just like everybody cares about not just themselves, and because I kind of credit that too to Nashville, because I feel like Nashville's a town full of people who moved there to pursue a dream, and we all know that everybody else is there to pursue a dream too, and we all we can relate, like whether we're on top or like just getting in and figuring it out, like you know that everybody around you is just trying to live a dream.
You understand it.
Yeah, it's like people care about people, you know?
As somebody who I think would know something about this, do you think Yodel Kid, Mason Ramsey, has a chance of being a huge country star? Have you heard his work?
Oh, that new EP is so good.
Yeah, I do. I really do. I can't wait. I always get really nervous when like incredible young talent gets discovered really, really early, because I don't want those outside forces to act on the passion that made that good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like the whole business thing, like don't let the passion become a job until like everything around you can protect you and protect that passion. That's the only thing that I pray for. But I've talked to people that work with them, and it sounds like there are those people and there are those angels kind of acting in that world, because it's hard to balance that. It's hard to balance like, hey, we're getting all these offers, but I think he's incredibly talented, and I'm really excited for him, because I think he's, yeah. I mean, you just see it on his face. There's this fearless, like, yeah. I love his spirit when he's performing, which is always a really cool sign.
That was so beautifully put. I've never heard something like a question like that answered in that way. Beautiful.
Thanks, man.
Are you writing for any other artists or just you?
I'd like to. I'm kind of shit at it. Just because like I like doing weird stuff, and I can get away with it when I'm just like, don't worry, I'll figure out how to make this work. You know, when it's somebody else, you gotta kind of. I would love to write with other artists, for other artists.
That's cool.
You know, it's hard to write for other artists when they're not in the room. It's much easier when you kind of know their vibe, but I would love that. Love that.
We don't have an album date. We don't have an album name.
Yeah, well, we do, but we don't know it.
Somebody in the room knows it. We don't know. But we do got 2 records. One Good Reason and Heartbreak. Listen to it. They're great.
Mm-hmm.
How you feeling?
Good. The only other question I had was, he was talking about writing. Do you think you could write good pop songs? You ever tried that?
Explain. Or I guess.
Well, like, you know, you write country music. Do you think you could write a good, like a pop song? Like
do you see it as 2 different types? Like if you were to go into the studio and create a song, would you go in with the intention of creating a country record, or would you go in with the intention of creating a pop song? Do you go?
That's a great question. Because my brain doesn't really work that way. But I'm trying my best to like give you an actual answer. I don't know. I guess because in some cases, like Drink You Away is a great example. JT can sing it, and it's a pop song. Chris Stapleton can sing it, and it's a country song, right? The song is a great song, and it's just a matter of how you produce it, or who sings it.
That's it.
You know what I mean? I think in a lot of cases, like there's so many songs that like one of my dreams in the very near future, like in the next like 5 years, I want to do a cover album with people not realizing that they're all covers. Like they're all deep album cuts on pop records that just never got discovered, and they're really like great songs that you could totally make into a country record. Yeah. You know, because they're songs, they're stories, they're there. So I guess I don't know. I think it's all just kind of like maybe production or like performance.
It's
I don't know.
And my voice.
My answer to your question is I have no idea.
What songs do you have? Any songs in mind for that covers album? Because that'd be awesome.
One of the songs that I do love, ever since the first time I heard it, I was like, even though now I know what it's about, kind of changes things. But the 1975, It's Not Living If It's Not With You, like, kind of reminds me of like a 90s country song in a lot of ways. Like, melodically, that's a 90s country song. It's so easy to sing along with, you know what I mean? Like, production-wise, it's not, but it's just, like, hanging on the fifth so much in the verse, and then the chorus is actually coming down in register versus going up. Like, it's such a bring-you-in song, you know? So that would be one, for sure.
Man, that'd be awesome. I also like watching your brain go through the song in your head as you're talking about it.
I'm super nerdy. I'm super nerdy, and I'm totally okay with it. Yeah.
Hunter Hayes, come back when the album's out.
Yeah.
We're always
I
here.
would love to, man.
Appreciate you deeply, dude.
Woo. Thank you.
Thank you for the energy and
thank you,
great
guys.
Conversation.
Cheers. Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. If you did, please subscribe and also check out our podcast. There's a link in the description, and also comment and like and do things. Other interviews are on the screen somewhere, so click them. Thanks for watching.